Growing up, all I ever really wanted was a sleepover. You know, have a couple friends over on a Friday night, watch movies, eat pizza, maybe call boys. But that was never possible at my house. My house was different than my friends. After school, my friends talked about being excited to go home, rushing into the kitchen for a snack, grabbing milk and cookies, making popcorn, raiding the fridge. But I dreaded going home after school. When I got home, I stopped and looked over both shoulders before opening the door. I snuck in quickly, and I shut the door quickly behind me, making sure never to disturb the curtain on the window of the door. I wasn't greeted by the promise of a snack in the kitchen. Instead, I was accosted by the smell of rotting food in the bottom of a bag at the bottom of a pile somewhere long forgotten. Our kitchen wasn't a place where my mom lovingly created meals for our family. Instead, it was a makeshift storage room. That it was overfull didn't really matter. None of the appliances in there worked. Not the stove, not the oven, not even the washer and dryer. Sure, there was food in the fridge, but I knew better than to open it and look there. My friends talked about how cool their bedrooms were, how much fun they had hanging out there. But my bedroom was never a haven. It wasn't a safe place just of my own. My bedroom closet was full of boxes and bags of my mom's possessions that no longer fit somewhere else. Over time, these items spilled out until they covered the floor. One winter, I remember, a plastic bag melted onto a baseboard heater beside my bed. I didn't recognize the hazards associated with that back then, but to this minute, I can smell the plastic of the bag as it melted, softened, and then cemented itself to the metal. My childhood house was not a home. It was a monument to disrepair, a museum of junk. As a child, I didn't know that daily shopping trips were unusual. For me, they were routine. And certainly, it offered two things: an escape from a bad day and avoidance of the ruinous state of our home. And certainly, one could never visit too many craft, music, or dollar stores. Shopping, acquiring, was magical, even for me. But what I couldn't see through the eyes of childhood was the connection between my mother's shopping and the conditions in our home. As my mom found more treasures to purchase, more stuff, our car and home filled rapidly. The treasures she purchased lost their sparkle and allure quickly. Now simply stuff. Most found a permanent home in a bag on the floor, on top of a pile, or dropped into a box somewhere. Decades passed before I learned that my mom's shopping and the clutter in our home were symptoms of something bigger. The clutter that I could see was simply the exterior representation of an interior chaos I'd never been privy to. My mom's need to save had bigger meaning. It wasn't about stuff. It was about challenges, fear, grief, problems processing information. Decades passed before I learned that hoarding is not a house problem. It's not a stuff problem. Hoarding is a mental health issue. Most of us probably haven't realized that. Research has indicated recently that more than half of us recognize hoarding in somebody that we know. We know someone who has a hoarding problem. And that's not really shocking for me. 3 to 5% of the population are hoarding affected. That's as many as 15 million Americans, more than the combined populations of New York City, LA, and Chicago combined. With a problem that large, it's not shocking that more than half of us know somebody with a hoarding issue. But perhaps what's a little more saddening is that only a small number, 1 in 25 of us, accurately understand that hoarding is not about stuff, but requires professional mental health treatment. I was really upset about these numbers, and it dawned on me that I had kind of some challenge with that myself because I grew up in it. I saw it every day, and yet I didn't even know this for a long time. Today, I hope that when you leave, you have a different look at what hoarding looks like. It's not about clutter, although clutter is a component. The DSM, the Mental Health Bible, the Diagnosis Bible, has 4 criteria required for diagnosis of hoarding. The first is the inability to let go of items, regardless of their value. The second is a perceived need to save the items, and a distress associated with the idea of getting rid of them. The third is that accumulating congestive clutter, which then limits the use of the home as it was designed. And fourth, we have that resulting distress, that compromise of functioning, whether that be social, occupational, or other levels of functioning. Sometimes we also see excessive acquiring, like my mom's daily shopping trips. We also see limited insight, which means that despite the fact that the house is full and people are making a big deal about taking care of the problem, the person affected doesn't recognize it as a problem. The challenge is that professional mental health treatment is hard to come by. Sending a truck with unskilled laborers to take the items out of the home does absolutely nothing beneficial long-term for the people involved. Unfortunately, the research has shown that a specific form of behavioral therapy, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, shows some pretty good promise in treating individuals like my mother who have hoarding disorder. Additionally, most individuals who get the CBT require in-home intensive support and coaching to take what they've learned in therapy and put it into practice in their home. But if you're in most communities across the country, there simply isn't access to this level of care. Families like mine, individuals like my mother, will instead live in shame, carrying guilt and embarrassment, and hoping that it doesn't lead to a crisis cleanout. Now, we don't all understand how to deal with hoarding, and that's okay. But I hope that today when you leave, you have a slightly different view of it. If someone like myself or like my mother would come to you and come clean, so to speak, I hope that your response would be one where you would stop and pause and give compassion. Maybe simply saying something like, "I'm so honored that you shared something so personal with me. Is there something I can do to help?" Now, nobody here is going to be able to go back and give me the childhood sleepover that I've dreamed of, but if you leave here today and understand that hoarding is a mental health disorder, it doesn't get fixed with a truck and a bunch of guys hauling the crap out. And if you're willing to hear someone come clean, share their story without responding in shock and awe, that's better than any childhood sleepover I could have ever hosted. Thank you.